Kingdom family, kingdom family, kingdom family, what's up? I am so excited to be with you today. My name is Justin Michael Williams, and we have a very special session today all about the power of love and what it means to expand our sexual intimacy and expand intimacy and love into our lives. And as we bring the slides up here, we will have an experience that you will understand that we have an incredible and special guest today named Dr. Alison Ash. And Dr. Alison Ash will be joining us today to help us learn how to expand our sexual intimacy. She's one of the best and most well-known and most influential coaches in San Francisco around this topic. She's a Stanford University lecturer. She's an author. She's an educator. She is the founder of Turn.love, and I'm so excited to bring her here with us today. She is absolutely incredible. And what I want to hear from you all really quick, how many of you all are single, maybe don't have a partner to practice any sexual or sensual intimacy with, but want to expand your sexual or sensual intimacy with yourself? Let me know in the chat box how many of you feel that way. You can just give me a yes or a holler, or those of you who know how to type in some ones. And then how many of you have a partner or maybe want a partner in the future, and you want to expand your sense of love with this partner and be in sensual or sexual experiences that actually expand love and are more than just physical? You know, one of the things that I've been saying for a long time is that I love and I want my sexuality to feel like a prayer. I want my sex to feel like a prayer. And so we have this opportunity here to do this today in our episode, which is going to be such a gift here at the Kingdom Sundays on the power of love, expanding our sexual intimacy. And what I'm going to tell you really quick before we bring on Dr. Alison Ash coming up here soon is one of the things that's really important to remember is that what we're doing in this episode is not about like tricks to be more sexy. It's not about bringing sex into your love. It's about bringing more love into your sex. And what we're going to do today is you're going to actually be able to go through this Kingdom session is going to be a little different. We're going to go through experiential little practices. Don't worry, we ain't going too crazy, that you can do yourself here today. And if you're driving or if you're watching the replay or if you're in some environment, don't worry, you'll be in a safe place to do some of these things too. We've made sure it's special for all of you in that way. But we are also giving you some take-home practices that you can take home, so you'll have a menu, like a buffet of things for you to enjoy with anyone that you want in your life, including and especially with yourself. So first, before we get into any of the topics related to this right now, I would love to welcome our first timers. So first timers, if it's your first time here at the Kingdom, I want you to type in first time into the chat box. And if you type the words first time into the chat box, you'll see our community will welcome you. And you'll know that one of the things that we do here in this community, especially if it's your first time and you haven't seen it, is if you hear, the way we use the chat box is if you hear me or hear our guest or anyone else who comes up say anything that makes you want to say like, yeah, girl, amen, or I'm with you, or I love you, then all you do is put the number 1 in the chat box a whole bunch of times. And when you put the number 1 in the chat box a bunch of times like that, that's us kind of like snapping our fingers and saying like, yeah, I'm with you. And then the other way that we also use the chat box is simply typing in your favorite quotes or golden nuggets into the chat box so that we can have a cascade of golden nuggets going together throughout this experience. And so I see lots of first timers here. Hello, Janine. Hello, Kat. Hello, Maddie. Hello, hello. Welcome everybody from the community. And I would love for everybody to just type in where you're coming in from. So type in where you're coming in from today, and you can see we have people coming in today from all over the world. So welcome to all of our first timers. So a couple things today that I want to mention to you. here at the Kingdom Sundays. So the way that this session works is we start by learning something, and then we embody these learnings into a practice. And then we learn how to integrate these learnings into our lives. And this is really what makes the Kingdom stand out, is we're learning how to integrate these experiences into our very real lives, and action is one of the most important things to me. You have time to ask questions. We'll end with one of the most important things, a golden nugget. And then, of course, we have song and music to take us through the entire experience as well, because music is the medicine that makes us open and expand into our hearts. And that's really where all the change happens. And I want to teach you all something today that we're going to do that we haven't done in this way before. And so I'm very excited about this because we have some new features here for you all. So on the screen, you are going to see a little cute, like next underneath the button for chat, you'll see a little question mark inside of a little talk bubble. That question mark space is where I want you to put your questions. And then what happens, instead of you putting all your questions in the chat, if you put your questions here for me or for Dr. Alison Ash, then what will happen is everyone else who's here can actually upvote on a question. So when you see someone type in their question, and I'll just type in one here, for example question. You all can go to the little question thing, and then you can upvote by pushing the little arrow above the number. And when you upvote it, we'll see the questions that the most people want to hear. And so I want you all, as we're going through this experience, I see you all upvoting it. Great, great, great. Go ahead and do that now so I can make sure it's working. And I want you all to do this throughout. So don't wait until the Q&A section. Throughout the experience, if you have a question come up, come type it in. Keep coming and checking the question box and upvoting the questions that you want to see answered. And we'll do our best to get some questions, as many questions as we can up here for you all to experience with Dr. Alison Ash and with me today. So I'm very grateful that we have this question feature. So now, as we continue our journey today, it is so important that we start each of our sessions learning about the Kingdom, and especially for the new people here, but just really reminding us about the power of this community and what we're here to do. And so people often ask, what is the Kingdom? But I think a better question is, who is the Kingdom? And we have a special video from one of our incredible community members who is going to tell you a little bit about the Kingdom through the Kingdom Manifesto. Here it is.
Aloha. Welcome to the Kingdom community, a place where we come together to grow, belong, and rise. It's a space where we celebrate our journeys and inspire each other to be the best version of ourselves. We believe that true growth is collaborative and that we reach our full potential when we help others thrive. We come to the Kingdom to be inspired and energized, to feel supported and held, and to help others do the same. Our community is built on the power of connection, and we believe that everyone belongs here. We strive to create a safe and accepting space where we can reflect honestly, listen generously, open vulnerably, and love deeply. We rise together. We believe that there's something bigger than us and also something big within us. We believe that all of us have the power to transform our lives and change the world. We believe that music is medicine, singing is sacred, and dancing is how our body sings. We believe wisdom is everywhere, but especially in you and you and you. So today, we invite you to join us. We believe in you. We believe in us. Everyone is welcome in the Kingdom. Together, let's grow, go beyond, and rise. We rise together.
We rise together, everybody, and that's Thomas Delane, incredible member of our community that I'm so grateful. He's an incredible teacher who got certified as one of our teacher trainees as well, and so Thomas, thank you so much for welcoming our community in this beautiful way. So, as we continue on our journey today into learning about expanding our sexual intimacy, before we begin, I want to talk about just a few announcements and some ways to get more involved in the community. So, here are our next two episodes, which will be the last two episodes of the Kingdom, is August 20th, Forgiveness, a how-to guide. And then in September 24th, we're having Love as a Political Force. So learning about the power of forgiveness and how that enhances our love, which we all know is really important, and also using love as a political force. And then a few ways that we're engaging this summer. We're doing several things this summer to help you open up and expand your energy. And I want to invite you all into these areas with our community. So, first, we have the 7-day energy detox. And obviously, take a quick screenshot of these or a quick picture of these because I'm going to move quick if you want to do them. And then you can get the QR codes that will take you to the pages. So we have the 7-day energy detox, which starts on August 7th. It's a special thing to do this summer to help you detox your energy. It's a course all about a 7-day program, all about shadow work and removing the shadows, or getting to know the shadows rather, from your life so that you can step more fully into the life that you desire. I'm also doing, self-sabotage has been one of my favorite things to talk about. And so we're doing a Stopping Self-Sabotage free webinar on July 27th. And so come access that free webinar on July 27th. 40 days to transformation. Y'all know we only do this program twice a year, is starting on August 28th. This is our flagship program for transformation. And then finally, I want to spend just another moment on this. All y'all know that one of my favorite places to take people in the entire world is Bali. And I know we got some new people here, so that's why I'm announcing it here today. We have our retreat in Bali, March 9th through the 16th, okay? Just about 7 months away. And what's happening in Bali is an incredible transformational experience that is a live music and mindfulness retreat. We are at Michael Franti and Sarah Franti's retreat center called Soul Shine in Bali. We went last year and we have up-leveled it incredibly. We only have 5 spots left for the whole retreat. The retreat is almost completely sold out. And that's why I'm mentioning it to you today. We have about 60 people already coming. We have a few rooms and even a shared room and bed types available. So if Bali is calling your name, and if you've been one of these people like, I always wanted to come to one of your retreats, like I've been thinking about Bali, this is for real, like your last chance because the retreat is almost sold out. So I just wanted to make sure you all know about that, okay? And for those of you who are wondering how to access previous Kingdom sessions, okay? So somebody already asked this and I'm just mentioning it here. How do we access, Maddie M asked, previous Kingdom sessions? So on YouTube, you can get all the previous Kingdom sessions. If you just go search Justin Michael Williams on YouTube. They're also on my website, justinmichaelwilliams.com. If you click the blog, you'll see all of our previous Kingdom sessions. And we also have all the previous Kingdom sessions on our podcast. So if you listen to podcasts, you can hear it there as well. And the podcast from this episode usually goes up in about a week. And the replay from this is available right away after the session is over, right here at the same link that you're watching on. So thank you, Maddie, for asking that question right away. I thought it was a really important one to mention right here in our announcements. Okay, so now that we have handled all the logistics, I forgot one of the most important ones. I'm sorry, y'all. Soul study. Every Wednesday, our community gets together after the Kingdom, and we do this every week on Zoom, where the Kingdom is, me and the guest talking to you and you all talking through the chat. Soul study is on Zoom, so everybody can connect with each other. And we deepen the lessons, and you will see how special soul study is going to be this month as we are learning real practices to expand more love into our intimacy and connection. Okay, so before we begin our session, we do something special in this community every time to help us drop into the present moment. And we call this a little bit of silence, just a little bit of silence. And so what I want you to do right now, everybody, is type a word into the chat box that you want this community to drop into together, an energy that you may want us to drop into together. And what will happen is I'm going to set a timer for 1 minute, and we'll just take a mindful moment. And whether you're driving, working out, washing dishes, whatever you're doing right now, whether you're listening to the podcast, watching live, just take 1 minute to get fully present so that you can let all of this and give yourself permission to let all of this drop into your heart so you can take what you came here for. So, Barbara said here in the chat that she wants us to drop into the word compassion. So, we will take 1 minute together and take a little bit of silence and drop into the word compassion. 1 minute begins now. You can place your hands over your heart and close your eyes and just drop deeply into this space with us. There's our 1 minute of silence, everybody. As we open up every session of the kingdom, we will start with a short prayer. God, Spirit, Universe, all that is, all that ever has been, and all that ever will be, we thank you. Thank you for bringing this community together. Thank you for our special guest, Dr. Alison Ash. Thank you for giving us the courage and permission and the time in this world where we, a diverse group of people, can come together and talk about a topic in such a sacred space about expanding our sexual intimacy, about bringing more love into our lives. May each of us learn and hear something today that we get to put in practice and use with others and with ourselves to spread and expand love on this planet, in our hearts, through our bodies and our somatic experience of this world. And may each of us remember the divine gift that is the pleasure and joy of this life. And that is divine and sacred. Thank you, thank you, thank you for bringing us here. So it is. Ashe, Aho, Salam, Amen, Shalom, Satnam, Awen, Om. Thank you. Here we are, y'all. Here we are, y'all. It's kingdom time. It is time. It is time. I'm so excited for this session today and the magic that we're going to get to play in this space together. So I'm going to open up with a quote before I bring up our special guest. So this is the quote of the month. The quote of the month says, "The opposite of pleasure isn't pain, it's disconnection." And this is from an incredible leader in the world named Evian Whitney. The opposite of pleasure isn't pain, it's disconnection. And I feel this so deeply in my own life and in my own heart when I think about this work, because the feeling of connection to others and feeling loved and touched and connected and felt, I think we all felt this so much during the pandemic. And the impact, the skin hunger, the connection that we wanted with the people that we love. And even hearkening back to our episode that we just did on grief with Addison Brazil, where he said grief is love with nowhere to go. And so when we don't have connection, we don't have a place for our love to go. And so today, as we expand on sexual intimacy and love in this space, we're going to learn deeply how love shows up through the power of deep, deep connection. And again, whether you're somebody who has a partner, is interested in having a partner, doesn't have a partner, wherever you're at, we have something for every slice of society today. And we're going to ramp it up and enjoy this experience together today. And I'll tell you all one thing as I bring up Dr. Alison Ash. Actually, let me just introduce you to Dr. Alison Ash here today first, and then I'll tell you the little story. So, as we talk about expanding sexual intimacy, Dr. Alison Ash, which I will bring up on the stage in just one moment, I'm going to read to you her professional bio because it is very amazing, and I'm going to tell you a little something about her that I love. So Dr. Alison Ash is a trauma-informed intimacy coach and educator. She's a sociologist with a PhD from Stanford and the founder of a company called Turn.love, where what she does in her company is she helps clients experience the kinds of sexual interactions and romantic relationships that they long for. She draws especially from her extensive training in the Hakomi method of psychotherapy and innate somatic intelligence trauma therapy approach, and somatica, which is a model of sex and intimacy coaching. And what happened here is our producer of the kingdom, Ezra had experienced some of Alison's work, and he introduced her to me. And when he brought her work to me, I was blown away because I've seen a lot of this work. And I thought it was so practical. It was so approachable for people at different levels. And it helped us get an on-ramp, like ramp up from the most basic parts of connecting with ourselves to having like deep, wild experiences with others. And her heart and soul and the space that she holds and the frequency that she holds is really special to me. And so, Dr. Alison Ash, it is with great pleasure that I welcome you to the Kingdom community. Thank you so much for being here with us today, live. And you'll need to unmute, darling. There we go. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm so grateful to have you here. And I know you're tuning in from Italy, right? Are you in Italy right now? Did I get that right?
That's right. I am.
Oh my gosh. Well, hello from the future. So let me tell you a little story here about why I've been so excited for this episode. When we were putting together the whole kingdom, I was excited about this because what many people know is I have actually been celibate for the last 5 years. And it's been a massive journey of healing and understanding and growth for me in a lot of ways. And in the last couple of years, as I've been opening up myself to sensual and sexual experiences again, slowly, I've gotten to relearn how to be sexual or sensual or intimate in a way that was in alignment with who I've grown to be spiritually now as an adult. Because so much of my sexual and sensuality and all of this was kind of based upon the trauma and experiences that I had as a young kid, or what I saw in movies, or what I saw in porn, or what I thought was supposed to be. And so in learning to expand and set myself up to where my sexuality was in alignment with my spirituality, I thought there's no higher expression of love for us to have at this time. And so I want to thank you for coming to share your wisdom with everybody in this community today. So thank you so much for being here.
It's a topic I love to talk about because I think it impacts so many of us, and we're really not templated very well in society at large, oftentimes in our family structures, in our school systems, how to have healthy intimacy.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I want to start there with that question of a word that you just said, intimacy. You just said the word intimacy. What is intimacy? I think it's a word that we throw around a lot without actually really knowing what it means. So from your vantage point, what's the word intimacy mean?
Well, I love this cheesy mnemonic device that intimacy stands for into me you see.
Ooh,
and it's
everybody type that in. Into me you see. Type that in, everybody. Type that in. Okay, that's good.
And it's an experience of mutual shared vulnerability, of really truly letting somebody into your inner landscape and being let into theirs.
Beautiful. And when we think about letting someone into our landscape, is sexual intimacy then different from physical intimacy? Is there some considerations for us to have there?
Yes, I like to differentiate between emotional, physical, and sexual. So, emotional intimacy is this experience of feeling really known, your emotions, how you feel, having that sense of being what I like to call emotionally naked, right?
Mm,
And physical intimacy is the sense of closeness where you feel comfort and familiarity and ability to share affection. You might have physical intimacy with close friends, with family members, hugging, cuddling, holding hands, all examples of physical intimacy. Sexual intimacy is this experience of closeness and vulnerability in an erotic space. And you can have sex with somebody without having sexual intimacy. When we have sexual intimacy, we have an understanding of people's preferences, desires. We feel safe enough to share needs and boundaries, to say not that, but yes to this, and to explore, because exploring can be really vulnerable.
yeah, I love that you just said that. We can have that's like a quotable for me. We can have sex with people without having sexual intimacy. And we've all, I don't want to say we've all, but I know I've had that experience, and it never feels good. Or maybe physically it could feel good. But I think for me, at the end of the day, it feels incomplete, right? And I see Evie typing that into chat box and Kalani. That's a really powerful thing to state. And I think that's why in today's episode, we're talking about this because we want to be people who are bringing more love and intimacy and connection into our sexual lives. And I think, as a person, and I know everybody here who's listening, sometimes we feel like we don't know what we're doing. But when we can step into and learn some of these skills, it can now be a gift to our partners and the people who we're with. And they actually get to experience and up level into something new. So I find that to be like the really cool part of the process because when all the things that I've learned with some of the partners that I've had, even sensual moments with, they're like, oh my God, I've never done anything like this before. That was amazing. I didn't know. And so it's so cool because sometimes it feels vulnerable, like you said, to go with a partner and say, hey, want to try this thing? And that requires the intimacy and connection that you're talking about and the vulnerability. So
Mhm.
I think, what this is bringing me to well, actually, I'm gonna pause right there, Allison. Like, when we're bringing things to partners and we learn some of the things that we're gonna learn today, and we're with people in the world who don't have these tools or these skills, how do you even suggest that we start to bring these things up? Because sometimes it's not matched up exactly?
It's true, and I think that while I like to differentiate between emotional, physical, and sexual intimacy, it's also important to note that they reinforce one another. And I think having emotional intimacy is really fundamental for having sexual intimacy because when we have emotional intimacy, we experience acceptance, empathy, curiosity, and shame is at the core of so many people's experiences around sex, how they relate to sex. And I have another acronym for you. Shame stands for should have already mastered everything.
Ooh, you got all the good ones. Okay, everybody type it in. Shame is
Yeah.
should have already mastered everything. That is one that I've never heard, and thank you. Go ahead, continue.
You're welcome. Yeah. And I think at the core of shame is a fear of rejection, that I'm going to be rejected for who I am, for what I like, for the ways that I'm not enough or too much or some interesting combination of the two. And so I often say that the antidote to shame is empathy. Because when we experience empathy, we experience acceptance for who we are. Empathy doesn't have to mean you're right, I'm wrong. It doesn't have to mean I'm going to abandon myself to do what you need or want. It just means I get who you are and it makes sense that that's how you feel and I accept you as you are. And when we have that emotional currency of empathy, of acceptance, of vulnerability, it creates a safe space to explore sexually. And for me to say, hey, I'm into this thing. And you could say, well, I think it's hot that you're into it, but I don't know that I'm into it. Or
Mhm.
maybe it's, can we try it in slow baby steps so I can figure out if I'm into it because I'm not sure. It's a co-exploration of our Venn diagram of overlapping yeses. This is what you're into. This is what I'm into. Let's figure out where that overlaps.
This is really good. And what are so this is what I really want to get to here because this is, our theme this season is on the power of love. So what's like the role and the relationship between sexual intimacy and love in particular? Like, what's your view on that?
Well, we can have love with all sorts of folks, whether or not we have sexual intimacy. We have love with our family members, with our close friends. But even there are folks out there who are asexual. Maybe they don't want to experience sexual intimacy, but they're romantic, or they experience deep love with a partner in a way that's different than how they would in platonic or familial settings. But for many people, they want to have sexual intimacy as an expression of love. And I think a lot of this goes down to thinking about how attachment bonds are formed. When
Mhm.
we're thinking about attachment, touch is one of the most co-regulating things in the world. So when we're thinking about our nervous systems, everybody has one, and it can get really dysregulated when we're upset or anxious or we feel shame or some other big challenging emotions. And we can self-soothe, but we can also be soothed in connection with people that we're close with and that we trust. And there's a lot of ways that you can co-regulate with somebody. And for most people, touch is the most co-regulating thing in the world. Sometimes if somebody has a lot of trauma or something like that, it can actually be dysregulating. But for many people, touch is regulating. And so when we experience physical affection, sexual intimacy, it's a way of both expressing our love, but also of deepening those attachment bonds through this
Mhm.
experience of co-regulation. And that's the somatic experience of love. It's how it lives in our body. We can express love through our actions, but we also feel love in our nervous system.
I love that you just pointed that out because I was like, okay, I'm getting to the crux of this here, which is feeling the love in our nervous system. Not just hearing that we're loved, not just knowing that we're loved, not just even all the other, let's say, acts of service or words of affirmation or all of these different things that come with love. But in the sexual intimacy, we get to feel love in our nervous system somatically. And this is where we're expanding love in a way that we've never done in any of our other kingdom episodes, is how this puts the love, like Kialani is saying right here so beautifully, in our bodies in a really real and practical way. And so today we are going to explore some different techniques. And I'm excited because what you talked about is about feeling love in our bodies and those attachment styles, but it's not necessarily they don't all need to be sexual. There's these different types of intimacy that you've explored with us. And I love looking through your work, I want to take your whole program because it's just so amazing and robust. I mean, honestly, Allison, it's really incredible. I'm so blown away and impressed by the space that you hold and the dynamic that's there and the integrity that's there. And I know that we have these 4 different ways that we're going to explore today. And I want everybody to know we're going to go through this ramping up. Okay, we're going to ramp up the experience, so it starts light. And I want you to enjoy some of these experiences that Ali's going to walk us through. And so I'm going to bring up the slides here. And for some weird reason, they're in the middle. I don't know why that's the case, but let's see if I can. Bada boom. Okay, there we go. So as we try these practices, the way we'll do is we'll experience some together, and then we'll give you something to take home. And at the end, we'll kind of summarize all of them so you have a toolbox of things to use to expand your intimacy. So the first way that you talk about expanding intimacy is through embodiment, Ali, and practices to get in our own body and notice the sensations in our bodies. And I know that these practices, embodiment practices, can be done solo or with a partner. But what I want to know, actually, before we even beginning any of this, why is it important, or is it important, is a better question, for everything we're getting ready to learn to also do by ourselves? Do we have to do all this stuff with a partner? Is it for the purpose of having a partner? Or can it also be done with ourselves?
Well, I think embodiment is one of those skills, and let me just define embodiment. It's the experience of being present in your body, noticing the sensations and the emotions, and letting the body become more aware of itself. And embodiment is crucially important because it helps us navigate consent. We can have a cognitive sense of our yeses and our nos, but we also have a very felt sense of our uh-huh or uh-uh. And to be able to know how that changes in real time requires some amount of embodiment. It helps us identify our needs and our boundaries, our desires. Pleasure and how it changes is very much felt in the body. When we're embodied, it increases our capacity for pleasure. It also does increase our ability to be a good lover because we can attune to our partners better and we can be more regulated in our body, which has us feel like a tuning fork for their nervous system, helps that co-regulation process and that feeling of safety and security. So embodiment is really important for the individual. And it's also really important in relationships. And I think a lot of this intimacy is a skill, and a lot of these skills we can practice on our own. We can practice with friends, we can practice with family members, depending on the skill. And like any skill, we can get better at it with proper instruction and practice. And I think with a lot of skills that are related to intimacy, when we can practice them on our own, it's easier than practicing them in romantic settings. And so if you can practice embodiment on your own, then it'll be easier. You'll have a little bit more muscle memory to be able to be embodied when you're in the throes of passion or in the intensity and the vulnerability of intimacy. And so many people that I work with struggle with being stuck in their head during intimacy. I think that's a pretty universal issue. And so embodiment
Put
is
some ones in
the
the chat
way
box if you get stuck in your head during intimacy, friends. Put some ones in the chat box if that happens to you. Sorry, go ahead, Alec.
Yeah, it's really universal. And so if we can be embodied, then it's a way out or through that experience.
Beautiful. And so if you were summarizing like in a sentence, because I want people to type something in so that they can really make sure they remember it and get it in their brains. Embodiment is
the felt sense of being in your body in the present moment.
beautiful. Everybody type that in. Embodiment is the felt sense of being in your body in the present moment. All right. So let's get into our bodies a little bit here, Dr. Ali. So there was two practices that I was really excited to do. And I know the first one, you already know about. So I'll let you actually guide us through them. Is that cool?
Sure. I just need to remember which ones you want me to do.
I will guide you. Don't worry. So the first one then
Great.
about holding our breath, tensing the muscles, slowly releasing. So again, just on-ramping people into the body. Yeah.
So tension release is really great because it creates a lot of sensation in the body. And so you're getting a lot of input to pay attention to. So we'll all do this together. What I want everybody to do is to take their hands and clench them into fists. And then I want you to squeeze your biceps in and take a deep breath and hold until you start to shake. And once you start to shake, we'll all shake at different times. I want for you to very, very slowly open your hands and release your arms. And notice all of the sensations that you're feeling in your hands, in your body. Notice any relaxation that you may feel. Maybe some heat was generated, tingling. And so you might even try to get notice what you...
There's so much happening, and I would never even think to notice how much was happening, like in my hands or my forearms, for example.
And I love this one because you can do this kind of discreetly. You can just squeeze your hands underneath a table or by your side. It's like a really wonderful way to just have an anchor into your body.
Beautiful. So this awareness, so we're now starting to tune our awareness in the present moment into our bodies. And all of you, as we're going through these and you have questions pop up, I see some of you are doing this already. Please type them into the questions area, the little question mark button underneath the chat button. And if you go to that section, and then everybody can upvote the questions that they want us to answer a little bit later. So make sure you put your questions there and not just in the chat box. All right, so the second one, Dr. Ali, is now bringing this down to the pelvic floor muscles and the breathing deeply while squeezing the pelvic floor.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just say this one's fantastic because if you want to feel confident, this is great. And if you want to start to generate some sexual heat, some desire, some erotic energy on your own or with a partner, this is a really good shortcut for doing that. So what I'm going to invite everybody to do is you're going to breathe slowly. And as you inhale, you're going to squeeze your pelvic floor muscles. So essentially the muscles that you would squeeze to prevent yourself from urinating. And then as you exhale, you're going to release those muscles. And you can time them with your breath. And I'm going to invite you to close your eyes because it's a little easier to notice what's happening in your body.
How hard are we squeezing, Dr. Ali? Sorry, can I interrupt? How hard are we squeezing or how soft?
Please. I mean, your pelvic floor muscles can get a strain just like any muscle in your body. So you don't want to strain yourself. You don't need to squeeze this.
So not like we were doing with our hands, like a little.
No. I'm so glad that you asked. I wouldn't want to lead anybody astray. Just like a gentle squeeze. You can also think about like a light switch, squeezing, releasing, or you could think about it like an accordion. Squeeze, 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 release, 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 release. Okay. Either way is totally fine.
All right, let's do it. Got it. Thank you.
Okay. So go ahead and close your eyes. I would take a breath in, squeeze those muscles, and exhale and release. Inhale and squeeze. Exhale and release. You can continue the breath and the squeezing and releasing on your own pace, at your own pace. And I want you to just notice what sensations you're feeling in your genital region. Maybe you're feeling some warmth or some tingling. Maybe you feel something that you might define as pleasurable. And also you might not feel anything at all yet. That's totally fine. Embodiment is a skill that develops with practice. And also you're in a class, which is somewhat of a contrived environment to do an exercise like this. And so even if you don't feel a whole lot right now, you might feel more if you try this again later. But just stick with it if you can. Inhaling and exhaling, squeezing and releasing. Scanning your body to see what you notice. Maybe one last round of breath and squeezing and releasing. You can open your eyes whenever you're ready.
I want to know how everybody's feeling after that in the chat box because I feel all tingly. It's great. But I'm definitely in my body right now. Like really, that like grounded me all the way down. Like I feel every little bit of my physical body right now. Yeah. I can't wait to hear how you all are experiencing that in the chat. If you're comfortable. Also, I know this is a sensitive topic, so if you're not comfortable sharing the chat, anything that we ask you to, don't feel obligated and would love to hear. You know, that practice in particular, that's something we can do anytime, anywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Is there anything else you want to say about that practice before I move on?
Well, I think it's really great if you're wanting to bring your desire, your sense of pleasure online. But also, I have some clients that will do this before they go into a big meeting, whenever they want to feel connected to their root, feel really grounded, feel confident, feel alive. It's got a lot of opportunities to be put into use.
Yeah, this is great. I'm giggling because my mom is here today and she's like, well, this is my first class like this with my son. A little awkward, but I like it. I'm really bless. Hey, mom. So anyway, no, this is good. Expanding together. So, but separate. So a practice, I want to give everybody a take-home practice here. And one of the practices that I loved the most from reading your work is about giving a hug and sharing a long hug. And I feel like a lot of people don't know how to actually give a good hug. And so can you guide us through actually like how to experience a good long hug that expands intimacy and connection?
Sure. I think one of the things that most people don't do is hug quite long enough for that release of oxytocin. And let me just say, you don't have to hug for any amount of time. If you don't feel comfortable, stop hugging. The point of hugging is to move towards safety, relaxation, connection. And so you want to make sure that you're in your body enough to know that internal uh-huh or uh-uh so that you can honor your own boundaries. It takes about 20 to 30 seconds for the brain to release oxytocin, which is that cuddle hormone that makes you feel really good. It's really regulating and it's very bonding. And I think that there's two different ways that people can hug. And one is for support. And when you're hugging somebody because you're dysregulated, you want to use their nervous system as that tuning fork, you want to feel supported, then the one who's doing the supporting is going to be a little bit more anchored and rooted and do a little bit more holding of the other person. And the other person is going to surrender into the hug a little bit more. When I'm receiving this kind of hug from my partner, I don't even squeeze him back. I just I'm like this and just let myself be fully held as I get a little rag dolly in his arms. And it's just so wonderful to feel him supporting my weight and to feel his breath. I'm noticing what it's like to be in my body as he's holding me, but I'm also noticing how his body feels. How if I can sync my breath with his, what his breath feels like on my shoulder, what his skin or clothing feels like. All of that is going to be really regulating. And then you can also hug just because you want to feel closer to somebody. You want more connection or the joy or the pleasure that happens from a hug. And that might include a little bit more touch. If you're doing more of a platonic hug, that touch would be on the top of the body, the back or the shoulders. If it's more of a sensual hug with a lover, somebody that you're flirting with, it might include more caressing, hair, lower back. You have consent, their butt, right? It can be a little bit more erotic in these ways. And when you're hugging in a platonic way, it's oftentimes more heart-centered. You're really feeling it emotionally. And when it's in a more erotic setting, you're feeling it emotionally, but you're also feeling more connection with your genitals. So this is where some of those pelvic floor exercises can be really useful. And you're feeling some of that pleasure start to come online.
Well, and I'm thinking this is so good. So I'm thinking about the hug, and when you just said feeling into your genitals, like I think about when you hug certain people, right? And maybe you can talk about the difference in this. Like people kind of hug. I wish I could stand up and do it, but I don't have the space. Like where you're like putting your whole pelvis back, you know what I mean, to make sure your genitals are not touching the other person. And it's kind of like this hug that's like this, steeped way back where you're pushing your hips way back from the other person versus like a hug where you're actually pressing your whole body, up against a person. And so you're saying that the second one is more of a way to go that is more sexual or sensual, but also when we're hugging people more platonically, we also don't want to kind of be in this way that we're like pushing away from them either. So what's the balance that we find with that?
Yeah, I love that you're raising this point, and I think you're spot on. When you're hugging in a platonic or familial way, you do want to have space between your genitals, but people really emphasize and exaggerate that they look like a bow and arrow, right?
Yeah.
And and then it just feels awkward. The other person feels worried and concerned about your comfort. It's not relaxing, and it doesn't necessarily feel safe because there's such extreme attention. It's going too far of a pendulum swing, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's about being really rooted and anchored and having good posture, like you're really standing up tall, but you are leaving maybe, this much space between your genitals
Yeah.
rather than this much space.
Yeah. Yeah. I always anyways, what I was really thinking of is in the support hug, how the first kind of in the support hug, giving yourself permission when you're the person supporting to really stand tall and hold someone. And even you could even tell someone if you're supporting them, like, you can let your weight go on me. So this is like how like, you can relax, like, I can hold you. And when you're hugging someone, like, even being able to give that instruction to give them permission to let go, because sometimes people don't know if they have that permission. And also when you're on the other side of that and you're the one being supported, to actually give yourself permission to kind of let go. Like, you don't have to be hugging back in
Mhm.
the same way, but I just felt that like sense of rest and ease when we're in the supporting hug place. And so this could be done with a platonic friend, with any family member, anybody like that. I find that really beautiful. Thank you. And so now as we ramp up a little bit here, and Kate, would you help me pull the slides back up, darling? So as we ramp back up here a little bit and we take it one step further into physical, sensory, and sensual intimacy. Physical, sensory, and sensual. I'm sorry, I skipped one. I knew I was doing something wrong. As we ramp up a little bit here to emotional intimacy. And we think about emotional intimacy and the way that we work it through. And I think I'm going to have to skip forward on some of these slides because something weird happened on our system. So pardon us as we slide through the slides, all the slides. There we go. Emotional intimacy. Oh, there we go. Emotional intimacy. We're going to go back one, Kate. I can't control them now because you brought somehow. There we go. So you talked about before, Dr. Ali, that in your work, one of the things that I loved is your metaphor of like sexuality and sensuality is like a freeway or a highway that people see. This highway example with no off ramps. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think that's important as we start to kind of level up our practices here.
Sure. In my practice, I noticed that a lot of couples in long-term relationships start to have less sexual intimacy over time. And one of the reasons is because they think of sexy time. And I love this phrase, sexy time, because it's beautifully ambiguous. It doesn't necessarily mean penetrative sex, it's just any kind of sexual intimacy. And people think that when they start to have sexy time, they have to go all the way, they have to go to penetration. And in long-term relationships, desire is not something that is a ready state for most people most of the time. When you are falling in love with somebody, when you have what we call new relationship energy and the flood of oxytocin, norepinephrine, serotonin, endorphins, all of those yummy cocktail of chemicals and hormones that make you feel like you're 16 again and make you feel very horny, we feel desire and pleasure as an initial state. But in long-term relationships, desire is something that comes online as an experience is unfolding. We do a little bit and I start to feel some pleasure, some desire. We do a little bit more and that desire and pleasure will build often. Sometimes it doesn't, often it does. And so what happens for a lot of couples in long-term relationships is they feel like I have to feel desire before I try anything because sexy time is a freeway without off ramps. If I start sexy time, then I have to go all the way to the end of the freeway because there's no way to get off the freeway. But if everybody knew that there were all sorts of off ramps at any point so that it reduced the risk of exploring, of giving yourselves the opportunity to see if desire comes online because you don't have to commit to more than you think you may be open to, then it really creates a lot of permission for people to explore their desire and to see what they're an authentic yes to.
And so in this way, you don't even have to be feeling the desire right away. You can just say, let me just explore and see how I feel. And you can get on the freeway and go, you know what? That was nice for that moment and I'm off. Or you can do some touch or some whatever, and then be done, but without thinking that it always has to lead to a destination. And that gives you permission and the freedom. I feel like it takes the pressure off to think, oh, if I go touch my partner a little bit, or if I go do this, then it's going to lead all the way to from A to Z. Sometimes that's a lot of pressure. And so this feels like it kind of releases
Hmm.
that valve that allows us to explore our intimacy using that word, explore, right? Which
That's
is,
right.
yeah.
And one of the other metaphors I like to offer is this idea of an intimacy bank. Okay, so we all have an account in the intimacy bank. And anytime you experience any intimacy, emotional, physical, sexual, 30 seconds passing in the hallway, 30 minutes exploring in a more luxurious way, any intimacy, you're depositing credit into your intimacy bank account. And what that does is it enriches the overall intimacy in your relationship, and it makes future intimate interactions feel more accessible, more appealing. It really feeds the overall health of a relationship. And so if you can really hold on to this idea of having an account in the intimacy bank, and you're exploring intimacy with your partner, you get on that freeway and you decide, man, actually, I think I'm full now, and you off ramp, it's a win. It's not a failure because you're depositing in the intimacy bank. But most people would feel like that's a failure because it didn't go all the way, air quotes, which means that then something went amiss.
Okay, and this leads to a really important question that Kalani brought up here in the chat, which is she said the off ramp so often is taken as rejection. How do how do you recommend that we deal with that, even with ourselves? Like when that desire is mismatched, even for example, like someone's on the ramp and they're ready to go at full speed, and the other person is ready to get off, and either us dealing with feeling the rejection or worrying about our partners feeling rejected. Because I know for me, sometimes I will want to get off the ramp and I will not get off the ramp sometimes because I'm afraid the person is going to feel like I don't want them. And that's abandoning ourselves. But how do we deal with this in a really practical way?
It's not easy. Let's just preface it by saying this is one of the harder skills that we learn when it comes to intimacy, though it's vitally important that we do, so that, as you say, we don't have to abandon ourselves to stay in connection with somebody else. That's not sustainable. And so the formula I like to give folks is step one, affirm something that feels genuine that you enjoyed about what you experienced. This cuddle was really sweet. This makeout was super yummy. This oral sex was really pleasurable, whatever it was that you experienced. And then number two, a completion statement. And I'm feeling really full now, or I feel really done, or I'm noticing I'm having a hard time continuing to stay present in my body, or I'm feeling a little anxious because I want to get back to work. Whatever it is, your genuine completion statement. And then here's the trick. You're saying no, essentially. You're still saying no to more, but you can do that by staying in connection. Most of us, when we say no, we feel guilty, and so we disconnect. Or if we hear no, we feel rejected, so we disconnect. And the disconnection is far more painful than the no. And so if we can hear and say no and stay in connection, then it might still be disappointing, but it doesn't necessarily land as this rejection.
Okay, so step one, affirm the experience that you had. Step two, make a completion statement. I'm complete, I'm done. So this was really amazing, and I'm feeling totally full right now. And step three, I'm sorry, stay in connection. Step three is stay in connection. And the way that we stay in connection is, for example, are you saying like, keep eye contact or keep hugging or stay close, or, look into their eyes and still feel and touch their bodies for a second so you don't feel like you pull all the way away? Are these some of the ways that you are suggesting we stay in connection?
That's exactly right. Keeping the eye contact, keeping some touch going, and energetically staying open, staying in connection, right? There's physical manifestations of that, but it's also an attitude.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I'm being conscious of our time here right now, and also, like, I'm totally in love with this episode, so I'm going to keep going a little bit more. But I just am conscious of the time. So if you want to move through these next practices as quickly as you would like, I don't want to. I don't want us to feel rushed. But I do have a few more things that I would love for us to get through, if that's okay, Ali. So,
Sure.
emotional intimacy was the next thing that we were bringing up, and we've already kind of talked about this. And what you just discussed really leads perfectly into the first practice that I wanted to talk about today with emotional intimacy, which is affirmations. I thought when I read your first of all, I keep saying when I read your work, I saw this thing and it was amazing. But this was really good. I mean, I've heard and read a lot of stuff. I teach so much in the personal growth world, and your clear, direct distinctions about affirmations versus compliments, or how to give a good affirmation, changed everything for me. I've already been practicing it since I read about your work. Can you share this with everybody, please, on how to give a good affirmation, especially in this context to develop emotional intimacy?
I'd be happy to. I like to say that affirmations are compliments on steroids because they are so much more powerful. So, a compliment is what you appreciate about somebody. And then an affirmation is what the thing that you appreciate, and then how that thing that you appreciate about them impacts you. And what's so powerful about an affirmation, I mean, how many of us put those ones up if you have a hard time receiving compliments? I know a lot of us do. Yes. And if I say you have a beautiful smile, Justin, you have a beautiful smile, you might think about how your teeth are a little crooked or yellow, whatever it is. I'm not saying they are, but whatever
No,
inner
I got
critic
you. Yeah.
thing that comes up for you about your truly beautiful smile. That's very common for people when they get a compliment. But if I say, you have a beautiful smile, and when you smile at me, I get butterflies in my stomach and I feel like I'm 16 again. You're not going to say, no, you don't.
Right.
Because I'm sharing my own personal experience with you. And it's more believable, it's more genuine. It feels tailor-made for you. And we all want to know how we impact people. We're hungry to know how we impact people. And so it helps create intimacy because remember, mutual shared vulnerability, it's much more vulnerable to share impact. I also like to tell people how to receive an affirmation. When people receive compliments, particularly if they have a hard time with it, they might deflect or argue or volley back right away. No, you have a beautiful smile. But what I think can be more powerful is to notice how it impacts you to hear that and to share how it impacts you to receive it. Because now
Mhm.
we're actually in this space of sharing mutual impact, which is a gift. I'm giving you the gift of how you've impacted me, and then you're giving the gift back of how I've impacted you.
And now we're relating on an emotional level, not just talking about what we're seeing on the external or on the receiving end, deflecting our compliments because of our trauma, or our experiences. This is so powerful to me. And, it is an on ramp onto the next topic that I wanted to discuss with you here, which is about we're leveling up people here, dirty talk. So you talk
Mhm.
about dirty talk in your work. What is dirty talk and how does it help develop emotional intimacy? And like, is it only sexual when we think of it? So I just love to hear some examples and, what you think about this.
Well, I would say dirty talk tends to move us into a little bit more of the sensual or sexual zone because and I think dirty talk is used to mean mostly vulgar talk, but I like to think about dirty talk as any time that you're talking about how something feels, what you want to do to somebody, or what you want them to do to you. You can dirty talk your most ideal kiss, right? That's not necessarily the most vulgar rated X thing, but if I say, I want to hover in front of your mouth and feel your breath and feel the magnetic pull of our lips to each other, but not give in. And I want to flick my tongue on your lips and tease you. And when you go in for the kiss, I'm going to pull back just a little bit so that you're really wanting it, but I'm not going to give it to you yet. Right? So you can dirty talk something that's pretty PG, but it gets really hot
Yeah, you can
and
feel that
erotic.
energy here. My goodness gracious. I'm like, hold on a minute. Right. So, great.
In
Well,
my
how do we
courses,
do
I
this,
often dirty
Dr.
talk
Ali? How do we learn
how
how
to
to
make a
do this?
peanut butter and jelly sandwich, because you can dirty talk something that's really PG and make it really hot.
Yeah.
It's also a lot in the delivery when you're feeling connected to the desire, to the pleasure, and you're using descriptive words, sensory based language, all of that. You're really thinking about the delivery of what you're saying as well as the content.
Okay, so the way to do it is thinking about the delivery of what we're saying, like, and expanding on the minutia, like the little moments of the experience. Are there any other little tips you have on people who've never done this, like to start being able to
Yes.
play with this a little bit?
Devil is in the details. So the more details, the better. When you're thinking about delivery, if you talk really, really fast, it conveys urgency. And if you pause a little, it's more teasing. It creates some of that anticipation. You can include breath, like that kiss, right? That also conveys desire. And in terms of tips and tricks, I really think that the younger generation is going to be way better at dirty talk because they've been sexting a lot longer, and that's
Mhm.
really good practice. So think about it's less pressure to do it in a written way. So whether it's leaving little notes or sexting or whatever that may be, it's a way to start practicing naming your desires that maybe doesn't feel as much pressure as somebody listening, and you can erase that word and choose a different word. And then also think about practicing with something that feels more familiar and more accessible, like a kiss is a great example. And then you can start to escalate into something that's a little bit more erotic or X-rated, how you want to spank or be spanked or something like that, as an example.
This is
Voice
great.
memos, somebody just put that in the chat box. That's
Yeah, Evie just wrote voice memos. That's good. This is great. So, I'm reflecting back right now on what we just learned about emotional intimacy and affirmations. I think my big takeaway from the affirmations was the second part of it, like you saying affirmations are compliments on steroids, but then talking about how that impacted you and what it is that you felt. That's really what makes it an affirmation because someone feels what their impact was on you. So, you know. Um, I really love the way that you're holding me right now because it makes me feel so safe and loved and like I can rest into you. And I'm always holding so much in my life and I feel so safe in your arms. Thank you. Like that's an
oh,
affirmation, right? Is that?
I melted. That was
Yeah.
beautiful.
And
Like
then
literally melted me.
great. Yay. Okay. And because my mom's here, I'm not going to give any dirty talk examples, but you gave us plenty. But go ahead.
But you could dirty talk even how you want to hold or be held, right? You're just like describing in detail how you want that to unfold.
Yeah, this is beautiful. I really like this. Like I was just joking with myself about like I could dirty talk like how I want to drink this tea, you know? Um, could you give us could you play that with me, Allison? Could you try to dirty talk like how I would drink the
Sure,
tea?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
How I want you to drink your tea?
Yep. Or
Okay.
however you want to do it. However you want to do it.
What I would like for you to do, Justin, is to pick up that cup and feel how hard and smooth it is. Hold it up to your nose and give it a whiff, smelling how delicious it is, feeling the warmth of the tea on your face. And now I want you to take a slow, savoring sip and let that tea coat your tongue, noticing how it tastes from start to finish.
Yeah. You can dirty talk anything. Oh, this is gonna be fun. I'm gonna be practicing this. This is gonna be really fun. Okay. Ooh la la. Yes, ooh la la. Okay. So let's move on to the next thing, Dr. Ali. So we talked about emotional intimacy here, And as we level up, or not level up, they're all equal playing field. Kate, can you help me move to the next slide? For some reason, it's not letting me advance the slides. Thank you. Physical, sensory, and sensual intimacy. And so, next slide, please. Some of my favorites. I know you have a workshop coming up called Sustainable Intimacy, which is about reigniting the flame for the long game. And it starts on October 4th. It's online. We put the QR code here for you all because literally Ali's work, as you can see, is incredible. We're just getting a taste here. And I had the privilege and the honor of being able to look into some of this work from her course. And if you go to the next slide, there's this list of practices that I pulled. These were some of my favorites from the big long list that was in there that I pulled from your program on sustainable intimacy. And these were just ways to enhance the physical, sensory, and sensual intimacy. And there's one here that I wanted for us to try as a group. So these are the ones that stood out to me because they're things that some of them are things that we hear about, but I think if we just slightly add the little special thing to it, it turns up the volume a little bit in our sensual lives. A bath. So people always think about taking a bath, but like with a nice smelling candle, a sexy playlist, and a delicious drink. I've never thought about that. Like making a drink it's like the bath now turns into a whole moment. Tracing words on your partner's body or on your own body. And maybe having them like try to guess what words they are as they're feeling it. Or, blindfold feeding, wrestling, dancing together, bathing each other in the shower, naked cuddling. This is a really great one that reminds me of the on-ramp that we talked about. Like you can just be cuddling naked and just have that be the moment itself. It doesn't need to be much more. Sitting cross-legged. This was one of my own favorites from my own life that I've learned a while back that people often, when I invite them into the experience, they go, whoa, is like sitting cross-legged with your partner, but your legs are wrapped around each other and you're hugging and breathing together and like syncing up and tuning the rhythm of our breaths, or putting ear to a partner's chest and listening to their heartbeat is another one of my personal favorites. I would love, from when you talk about sensual, physical, sensory, and sensual intimacy, before we do this practice of tracing, can you just help us understand now, like when we're moving from embodiment to emotional to now this area, like what's really a differentiator that we need to understand as we move into this zone?
Well, one of the things I think is really helpful is to think about how we can create scaffolding structures to get from wherever you may be, from parenting, working all day, whatever, stress of a commute, whatever it is, into more of a connected, intimate space. And so I think emotional intimacy can feed nicely into physical intimacy. So starting with an affirmation and then doing some cuddling and then exploring that something more sexual is a really good way to create some scaffolding. I also think that sensory-based pleasure can lead into sensual pleasure, which can lead into sexual pleasure. Sensory-based pleasure, something that's appealing to the senses, that bath example that you just gave, Justin, is something that awakens the pleasure centers in the brain. It starts to prime you to be receptive to more pleasure. And that can then make you feel, maybe you do that big jump all the way to sexual pleasure because you feel ready for it, but maybe you don't. Maybe you want to do something like wrestling a little bit, or naked cuddling, or taking a shower and bathing each other in the shower. All of these are things that can start to continue to allow you to let that creating the opportunities to see if that desire comes online. It's exploring how far on that freeway you want to go, essentially.
Beautiful. I love this so much, Ali. And so the tracing bit, can you walk us through that? Because this feels like such an integrated practice of everything we've learned so far.
Definitely. And I love things that are framed as games because it also is another way of reducing pressure. And you might have done this when you were a kid with your friends, where you are writing a word on their back and with your nail or your fingertip, and they're having to guess what the word is that you're writing on their back. So we could just do this all to ourselves right now. Go ahead and pick a word, maybe intimacy or love or pleasure or embodiment. That's a long word, body. And slowly start to write it on your hand or your arm, pardon me. And you might even notice the responsiveness of your skin as you're writing. You might notice how your nail feels different than the tip of your finger. You might play with intensity or pace. And this is one that can be really fun to do with somebody else on their body in a place that they can't see because it drives you to being in your body. In order to try and discern what they're writing, you have to get into your body to notice the sensations of the where they're writing. And so if you're stuck in your head or you're feeling stressed or you're feeling anxious or nervous, this could be a really wonderful, fun, silly way of getting into your body and playing with your partner.
This is beautiful. I love this practice. So we have lots of take homes here. We have dirty talk, we have affirmations, we have tracing, we have this full list of practices. And Kate, I'll have you be advancing me sometimes to these next slides, but we have this list of practices. Y'all can take a picture, a screenshot of that really quick so you have them, and we'll bring them back again at the end. But take a quick picture of that so you have a little list of things to take with you. So let's go into the next section in the next slide, which is about sexual intimacy. So we've kind of ramped ourselves to this point of going from embodiment to emotional to physical, sensory, and sensual to now sexual intimacy. So give me like a really clear distinction here before we go into one of our tools that we'll give people to take home. Obviously, we're not going to do any sexual practice here right now on the kingdom, but can you give me a distinction here that really helps me understand when does it become sexual intimacy?
Hmm. Well, sensual intimacy is sometimes sexual. Sensual intimacy is something that is feeling good on the body. So, sensual massage might not include the genitals or breasts or butt, but then it might start to move towards the genitals or breasts and butt. And then that can start to really get into more sexual intimacy. Erotic intimacy is another way that I might say that. Um, I think anything where you're starting to explore pleasure in an embodied way has the opportunity to start to move towards sexual intimacy, particularly if it's sexual pleasure.
Beautiful. And I think about this now that I have this freeway reminder of like these ramps, and it's like I can be getting on and exploring all these different things, and it's like I can get off at emotional intimacy, I can get off at sensual intimacy, I can get on at sensual intimacy, or off at physical, like wherever it is that I want to be. There's so much to play with, and that's honestly one of the main things that I'm hoping people take away from this is this kind of buffet of tools that we can use to have these really beautiful, deep, connected, intimate experiences with ourselves and with people that we love. So when we talk about sexual intimacy, when I looked through your work, there's one that I've actually just been really excited for you to talk me through, which is about the this or that game. And so, which
Mhm.
really is a big practice of boundaries and desire and speaking up, and what you talked about, like the vulnerability of needing, of being able to say what we want and need, but doing that with a partner. So can you explain and give us a clear example so people can use the this or that game in their own lives? So maybe it's like little instructions and some examples.
Yes. I think that this or that game is so beautiful because a lot of people have a hard time getting into their bodies. I would say, just as a side note, real quick, particularly if you have chronic pain, body shame, or you're a survivor of trauma, you have gender dysphoria, all of these things make your body a unpleasant or unsafe place to be. And then it's going to be a very wise protection strategy for you to not be in your body and to stay in your head. But if you're in your head, it's very hard to know what you want. And maybe folks in the room can relate to that experience of somebody saying, "What do you want?" And you get the deer in the headlights, like, "Oh, I don't know what I want." And then the shame comes up because you don't know how to answer that question. Maybe you feel their frustration because they want to know what you like and you don't have an answer. And so, where being asked, "What do you want?" not having the answer can feel really disempowering. Being asked to make a decision between two things is much easier to do and therefore can feel more empowering. And the way that the this or that game works is you're creating a experiment for somebody to receive two kinds of touch, evaluate which one they like better, which encourages them to get into their body so they can start to discern what they like, and then say, you can say A, B, both, or neither. But you want to create a good experiment. And so if you vary too many variables at the same time, you don't know what they like better or worse. They may not know what they like better or worse. So if you think about different ways that you can touch somebody with your hands, you can do like a scratch or a kind of a stroke with your fingertips, or a whole handed stroke, or like a massage, or kind of a spanking, all sorts of things. If you're using your mouth, you can blow, lick, nibble, suck, bite, scrape, tons of different ways that you can touch. Pick one. So let's say we pick a scratch. And then you're going to vary that one kind of touch on one of three variables. And the three variables are intensity, pace, and location. So I would pick either intensity or pace first. So let's say we pick intensity, which is how hard versus how soft. So you would do a soft scratch and then a hard scratch. So you would say, do you like it like this, or do you like it like that?
And then you just ask them which
And the
one they like.
receiver, yeah, you ask them which one they like. And the receiver might say, I'm not sure. Can you do it again? Great. Do it as many times as you need to do it for them to figure out which they like better. Let's say they like the softer one better. So then you do soft, and then maybe give them one that's even softer. So you're really calibrating now what their ideal intensity is. And then once you figure out how soft they want it, then you do that intensity that they like, and then you do a version that's fast and one that's slow. So you're varying pace. So you do, let's say they want it soft, you do soft and slow. And then you do kind of soft and fast. And then let's say I like faster. So then you would do soft and fast, and maybe one that's even faster. So again, you're calibrating pace. And then once you figure out the intensity and the pace, you might start to vary location. And that could both be where on the body. So for example, the back of the arm is going to feel different than the front of the arm, but also how much area you're covering will feel different. If I'm doing the whole forearm, that will feel very different than if I'm doing just by the wrist. And that's just one kind of touch. You could do this with all these different kinds of touch. And I think you can play the this or that game in two ways. One is to set a timer for 10 to 20 minutes. I'm going to explore, you be the receiver, I'll be the giver. It encourages me to be really creative and thorough. And we're just going to explore different parts of your body. You can do it on the periphery of the body, or if you want more sexual intimacy, you can use the core of the body, which will be more sexual. And then you could switch, or you can sprinkle them in. So let's say I want to know, I'm giving oral sex and I want to know how somebody wants it. Do they want me to use the tip of my tongue, hard or soft? And so I might say, do you like it like this, and do one version, or do you like it like that and do the other version? So you could sprinkle one or two in the mix as a way of getting some of that feedback about what they're liking or wanting without having to say, tell me how you want it, which some people might feel really happy to do, but other people might feel really put on the spot and have a hard time with.
Yeah, or don't know how to even articulate what it is they want. And I'm also just thinking of like, it takes away, and this is why the vulnerability is there. We're often trying to play like a guessing game, right? Like, and this puts us in our heads, I find, like we're with our partners and obviously we want to be attuned to their body and what they're enjoying, but sometimes we're like so focused on like paying attention to things. Oh, do they like that? Do they not like this? Do they like that? Do they not like this? That it takes us into our heads. And what I love about the this or that game is it just puts it right there on the table. And you get to really experience it in a playful way with each other, not in a way that brings shame, which is like, I should have known it all or whatever, already. Of course, how are you going to know? You're exploring this person's body, And I loved, in your work, an example of this that I saw of moving it around. So if it's like you're licking here and then you figure out you like, you're licking someone's neck, and then you do this or that and soft or hard or whatever, and then you're like, okay, now you move it to the ear, and now you move it to whatever, the elbow or the shoulder or the side of the waist, and moving it around and seeing the this or that. And if somebody's ticklish, somebody wrote here, like, this is a good opportunity for them to go, oh, yeah, that's too much. But there, I like it. Or if you do that a little harder, I like it. If you do it too soft, it tickles me. Like these different kinds of things give so much space to play.
And it normalizes the giving of feedback, the opening up lines of communication, the not that, but yes to this. That no's are actually helpful in this context because they help clarify yeses, and to be in that space of exploration and how to do that.
Beautiful, beautiful. Dr. Allison, I want to take a couple questions we have 2 questions from people that I'd love to take. And then we have a special song that we'll play for people, which you can stay for, or I know you're in Italy and it's getting late. A question that came in from Lori that we can see here is from earlier. She said, is the reverse true? And this is a question a lot of people upvoted. Can you have sexual intimacy without sex? Because we were talking about you can have sex without sexual intimacy. Can you have sexual intimacy without sex?
Great question. I love this. And yes, you can. So you can have sexual intimacy by exploring the this or that game, for example. That can create sexual intimacy. You can, I remember with my partner, we had already had sex, but this is when we first started dating, we wanted to kind of slow things down and backtrack a little bit. And so we had a couple of dates where we took sex off the table. And it just gave us the space to explore other ways of giving and receiving pleasure, being in the space of exploration, of making boundaries totally normal and acceptable and beautiful and hot. And it was a really great way of starting to deepen intimacy without going to that one thing. And then when we did go for it again, it was even hotter because we had delayed it for so long. And so I think sexual intimacy is this experience of feeling safe, exploring, being in your bodies, being curious and engaged about what the other person wants, redirecting when something doesn't feel quite right, escalating and de-escalating, and being in that dance. All of these things are elements of sexual intimacy that does not have to require oral sex, penetrative sex, any of that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I think this is super powerful. Thank you, Lori, for this question. Another question that came up that I thought was fascinating from Magdalena. This question from Magdalena says, is there anything to say about lust? And I find this so fascinating because lust, I think, gets such a bad rap in our culture, like the ego, it gets like banished into the shadow. And she says that she's celibate by choice, but she's occasionally blindsided by random lust attacks. What do you have to say about lust and where it fits into this picture?
Lust or desire is a hot emotion. I think what gets challenging is when people get attached to an outcome. But desire for the sake of feeling desire can feel really good and enjoyable and yummy and embodying and enlivening. And I think those are all really wonderful and empowering and beautiful advantages to the experience of lust and desire. I think when people experience a lot of scarcity of connection or have a really intense inner critic that tells them that they're never going to have the kind of connection that they want, or feels like they can't handle a no, then that's the shadowy side of lust. But you can definitely experience lust without those elements.
Thank you so much, Magdalena, for this great question. And the last question that I'm going to bring up here today is from Mariana. And we have this question from Mariana that talks about the solo moments. We talked about how important and how powerful it can be to practice some of these sexual, sensual, physical, emotional embodiment practices by ourselves. And she says, when you're married, there's sometimes this idea that we should not do that. Can you speak to that?
I think it's so important to cultivate your own relationship with your body, with your pleasure, and to remember how to center yourself in your own experience. And having these solo moments, whether it's pleasure-based like masturbation, or getting a massage or whatever that might be, or something that's maybe more self-soothing, like taking a long bath or gardening or going for a walk. These solo moments help you self-soothe. That can feel deeply empowering, and it helps you stay in relationship with yourself. And I always say that having healthy relationships is learning how to not have to abandon yourself to have a relationship with somebody else. And it's a lot easier to not abandon yourself if you have and prioritize these solo moments with yourself.
Yeah. And the thing that you talked about earlier that I thought was really powerful too with this is having the solo moments with yourself actually enhances your ability to show up in partnership because you're more connected to yourself and your body and your pleasure and all of these things. And I find that, the shame around that sometimes is so unnecessary because they exist and complement each other in so many beautiful ways. And so, as we kind of round this out, and I thank you so much, Mariana, for this question, I want to really ask you about love again. And this is going to lead right into our song as well as we kind of bring this into the heart, is when we think about how all of this that we have learned helps us expand our sense of love. What do you say about that?
I think that love is this experience of feeling in your body, connected to your own nervous system, prioritizing and valuing your own nervous system, and feeling connected to somebody else's nervous system, and demonstrating your acceptance, your empathy, your compassion, your curiosity, your affirmations, impact. All of these things are how we demonstrate love. I love Bell Hooks and the way that she talks about love as an action. It's a choice that we make. And I think that's brilliant. And I know that being able to be kind to yourself and show up for other people and prioritize this kind of intimacy is how we create and demonstrate love.
Thank you. I think this is so powerful. And it leads us, into one of the things that we do in our community is we use music as kind of the medicine that makes the teachings go deeply into our hearts. And so I recorded a little serenade for the community this week, singing one of my favorite songs about love, which is All of Me by John Legend. And I just want to invite people into this song. And Ali, I want to thank you so much for being here and sharing with us in all the ways that you have. You have expanded my sense of love in a really big way. And when we come back from the song, I'm going to give people a practice that they can take away from them in their very real lives and talk a little bit more about your course and some of these things. So Kate, if you would cue up our song, All of Me, this is a gift from me to all of you, serenading and helping you remember the power of love in your lives.
What would I do without your smart mouth? Drawing me in and you kicking me out. You got my head spinning, no kidding. I can't pin you down. What's going on in that beautiful mind? I'm on your magical mystery ride. And I'm so dizzy, don't know what hit me, but I'll be alright. My head's underwater, but I'm breathing fine. You're crazy and I'm out of my mind. 'Cause all of me loves all of you. Love your curves and all edges, all your perfect imperfections. Give your all to me, I give my all to you. You're my end and my beginning, even when I 'cause I'll give you all of me, and you give me all of you. How many times do I have to tell you, even when you're crying, you're beautiful too. The world is beating you down, and I'm around through every move. You're my downfall, you're my muse, my worst distraction, my rhythm and blues. I can't stop singing, it's ringing in my head for you. My head's underwater, but I'm breathing fine. You're crazy and I'm out of my mind, 'cause all of me loves all of you. Love your curves and all your edges, all your perfect imperfections. Give your all to me, I give my all to you. You're my end and my beginning, even when I lose, when, 'cause I'll give you all of me, and you give me all of you. Oh. Cards on the table, we're both throwing hearts, risking it all, though it's hard. 'Cause all of me loves all of you. Love your curves and all your edges, all your perfect imperfections. Give your all to me, I give my all to you. You're my end and my beginning, even when I lose, when, 'cause I'll give you all of me, and you give me all of you. 'Cause I'll give you all of me, and you give me all of you.
Just feel that as a prayer, everybody. All of me loves all of you. Love your curves and all your edges, all your perfect imperfections. Give your all to me, I give my all to you. You're my end and my beginning. Even when I lose, I'm winning. It's just so beautiful. I just felt it was a perfect song for what we're doing today as we're expanding our sense of love. And so I hope you feel that as a prayer. Dr. Ali, as we close, I know you have some really special ways that the community can get in touch with you, and some handouts and some special things that people can engage with outside of your amazing course that's coming up in October. Can you share with people the best way to get some goodies from you?
My website is turnon.love. Please feel free to reach out for intimacy coaching. I work with individuals as well as couples, and I have a bunch of on-demand workshops that you can rent from home, as well as my upcoming month-long course in October, Sustainable Intimacy. And I also have a course that I teach at Stanford University that I also offer to the public starting in January of each year, called Sexual and Emotional Intimacy Skills, which is a wonderful way to dive into how do we practice and improve upon our ability to create intimacy that so many of us want.
Yeah, and I hope you all can feel the power of how amazing Dr. Ali's work is. And this is just the tip of the iceberg of what we can do here. Just imagine the space that can be held as this was expanded into a state that you were able to take home and practice and come back and have guidance and feedback and community and the whole thing. And so I hope you go to turnon.love. We'll make sure that's in the show notes of the podcast. It's in the description of the YouTube video. It'll be here in the chat for you all as well. And, let's take a quick moment to everybody just feel our golden nugget for this session. what our main key takeaway is. We learned a lot. And Dr. Ali, I'll have you also share your golden nugget too. So the way that we do this is, everybody, if you just place your hands over the center of your chest and close your eyes and take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And if you could think of one golden nugget or one key takeaway from this session, what would that golden nugget be? What is the main one thing that you want to take with you into your life from this session? And then take a deep breath in and out. And to make it 40% more likely that you'll remember it, write it into the chat, and we will see a cascade of golden nuggets coming through the chat. You know, my golden nugget, well, actually, Dr. Ali, I'd love to hear yours first. What's your golden nugget from this time together? I know we get just as much when we're teaching out of teaching than when we're receiving. So what did you get?
I think it was just so wonderful to have your encouragement to really boil down some of these thoughts into these quick takeaway sound bites. And I really loved how you encouraged people to give these +1s for what landed and resonated with them. And I think particularly when we were talking about some of these intimacy practices, so many of your viewers had some great ideas and add-ins for what they do that help them to feel close and connected and explore pleasure and desire.
That's amazing. Dr. Ali, I want to thank you so much for being with us here at the Kingdom today. I hope you feel a part of our community. We are so honored and so grateful to have you here. You know, my takeaway as we close out, and we're seeing all these golden nuggets here from everybody, my golden nugget was really a big one that I felt is doing these practices of embodiment, emotional, physical, sensual, sexual intimacy, expand love. And because we can't actually experience all of love unless we get it in our bodies. We can't experience the full spectrum of love unless we get it in our bodies, and the somatic experience of it, and how doing this work expands us as a vessel of love on the planet for ourselves and to feel that love more deeply with others. So thank you so much, Dr. Ali, for inspiring me with that, inspiring all of our community with all of these things. And we love you. Thank you. Well, Dr. Ali, thank you, thank you, thank you. And so everybody, we will close out our session today with our closing blessing. And so just place your hands over the center of your chest. Take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And just feel the gratitude of being here in this moment. The revolutionary moment that we have here to be all these people from all over the world, of all these different races, ages, genders, experiences of life, having the freedom and the ability to come together at this time to talk about such a topic, such a radical topic, and what an absolute gift it is at this time in history. There's very few moments in history that a conversation like this would even be possible. And so we're healing generations forward and backward. And so God, Spirit, Universe, all that is, all that ever has been, all that ever will be, we thank you. Thank you for bringing this community together. Thank you for giving us this moment to expand our sense of love on the planet. We are so grateful, and we rise together. Ashe, Aho, Salam, Amen, Shalom, Satnam, Awen, Om. Thank you. Thank you, Kingdom community. We love you, and we'll see you in our next 2 sessions. Bye for now.